Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation as part of the Industry Insight webinar series. The topic this time is Cybersecurity 2017. It's a scary world out there. And speaking today will be Tomas Schoessow. Tomas is Vice President of Technology Infrastructure at Abacus Data Systems. He has a dynamic 17-year technology career marked by demonstrated ability to create solid business solutions, determine product needs, build teams, and achieve cross-functional business objectives. He is a result-driven executive who builds and secures enterprise-level technologies through growth initiatives and is a valued member of leadership teams. The Industry Insight webinar series is hosted by the ABA Legal Technology Resource Center. To stay updated on upcoming webinars or view previous videos, visit ambar.org/industryinsight. You can also stay updated on legal technology news through our blog, lawtechnologytoday.org. The presentation today will be followed by a Q&A. Please enter all your questions into the question box in the webinar panel on the right side of your screen. All questions will be addressed at the end of this presentation. We are also recording this webinar, and we will be sending the video in a follow-up email in a few days. We'll also post the video on our blog, which again is lawtechnologytoday.org. Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll now begin the webinar.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tomas Schoessow, VP of Technology Infrastructure here at Abacus Next. I want to start off talking a little bit about who we are and what we do. We've been a software company for about 30 years, a little over 250,000 clients. And what we've learned from that experience is, when listening to our clients, is that developing a practice management suite has been great for us, but our clients needed more. We've incorporated the wealth of technology and experience into an unprecedented suite of integrated technology solutions designed to enable small, medium, and large firms to, in all practice areas and jurisdictions of law, and leverage from the four pillars of legal technology success: technology readiness, practice management platforms, continued improvement, and management support. And really, in a nutshell, what does that mean? We've looked, as I stated before, we've looked at our customer base, we've understood the needs and the concerns, and we've developed solutions around those. A little bit about me. Again, a 17-year technology career marked by demonstrating the ability to create solid business solutions, determine product needs, teams, and achieve cross-functional business objectives. I'm a results-driven executive, a valued member of our leadership teams, and contribute to a broad-based perspective to create programmatic strategies and implement plans to design maximum return. The agenda for today is we're going to talk about types of threats that we're seeing in 2017. We're going to talk about recent examples that have come out. We're also going to talk about mitigation efforts for local networks, web servers, and email servers. We're going to talk about some tips to keep you safe, and then obviously at the end we'll have a Q&A. Jumping right into it. Ransomware and extortion will increase. We've all been aware of ransomware. It came out in 2013, better known as crypto defense, crypto wall, crypto locker, etc. The effects of this have been tremendous. We've seen where a customer had become infected, and not only is the local machine encrypted, but also network resources are encrypted. The delivery of the virus or the infection is usually via email. More times than not, we've seen this infection come through a link to a public Dropbox, box.com, whatever it might be, and the end user executes thinking that the infection has come from someone they know and or from someone that they don't know. And they click on the link because it says to, they do so, and then the virus or the malware infection will start to attack. The only way outside of this, the ways around that, is to pay the ransom, and that's why we've seen the increase. Ransomware is one of the most widespread and damaging threats that the internet faces today. Some of the infamous crypto locker first appeared, as I stated, in 2013, and we've seen new eras of this life encrypting ransomware variants delivered through spam messaging, exploit kits, extorting money from home users and businesses alike. IoT hacks will increase. As technology advances, there are more devices connected to the internet today than ever anticipated. We've exhausted an IPv4 space. We have now moved on to an IPv6 space. And what does that mean? That means, again, we have more devices connected, and those devices, when we talk about Internet of Things, are, some examples are the smart devices we have at home, the Nest, our watches, our phones, etc., etc. I can go on the list. Again, there are more and more devices that are connected to the internet today that is bleeding out data. And I don't want to say that it's spewing. I want to tell you that it's bleeding out data. That data that those devices are putting out, thousands and thousands of terabytes of data, right? But a good example of an attack with an IoT device is the DNS that we experienced last year. Botnets were installed upon unsecured and really unthought of devices. If it's the home Nest device, or if it's a camera, or whatever the device might be, these bots were installed, and when the attack happened, the bots is what attacked the DNS servers. What does that mean to the internet as a whole? DNS is a very large public DNS company. They host DNS servers for multiple businesses in multiple domains. When that attack happened, we saw companies go down, or their presence on the internet go down. And that's what that attack happened. That's a clear example of a DDoS attack, and we'll get into the details of how those work in a couple other slides. But again, we are seeing that IoT hacks are increasing. We are seeing that more devices, and people aren't taking those devices seriously. They have access to the internet. They are a computer in some function and can have virus and infections. So recommendations, I always like to give these at the end of, as we're talking about this, make sure that you're keeping those devices up to date from the manufacturer. Another piece of this is the internal threats. The increase of targeting of social media and personnel email bypass many network defenses like email scans and URL filters. The most dangerous aspect is how attackers manipulate victims, offer or threats that they would not want to present to an employer, like employment offers or illicit content. And I have a clear example. I had this happen to me last night. I was driving home and I went to go check my voicemail. There was a message from quote unquote the IRS that I was in legal trouble and that I needed to call this phone number. I immediately went to search the phone number to understand what it was, and it was a social engineering attack. Here we are, or here I am driving home. I have a voicemail that's telling me that I'm in legal trouble with the IRS. I do a search on the internet and I find out that it's an IRS scam. It's a perfect example of a threat coming from an external source. In past experience when working as a consultant, I was working with a broker-dealer here based in San Diego, and we had a social engineering attack as well. We had an email address that was created by an attacker. It had a single letter that was different than the originator's email, and the request came through as the customer would have requested for money to be transferred. Unfortunately, the money was transferred to an account that was not the customer's, and that broker-dealer had transferred out about $900,000 worth of data, or $900,000 to accounts that then transferred on to accounts that then transferred on to accounts. We worked closely with the FBI and were able to uncover how this happened. We were not able to stop the attack or get the money back, really. It's an unfortunate, but these are the things that happen when we start to talk about internal threats. As I mentioned in my previous slide, the DDoS attack at DEN, we need to take the denial of service attacks serious. It will crash the internet again. That's not a question about it. And what we mean by crash the internet, it's not that it's taking down the servers. It's preventing access to the servers that are hosting the domains. So what is a denial of service attack? For those that don't know, right? A denial of service attack is typically accomplished by flooding the targeted machine or resource with superfluous requests in an attempt to overload the system and prevent some of the legitimate requests from being fulfilled. A DOS attack is analogous to a group of people crowding the entire door or gate of a shop and business and not letting legitimate parties enter the shop or business, disrupting normal operations. Now, I'm reading that right off the slide, but really what it is it's a flood of the attack through the door. So if you have a door and you're trying to stick 100 people through it, obviously it's going to happen single file. That's what the attack looks like. Again, referencing the DEN attack that happened last year in October, it was a denial of service attack using IoT devices that took down on 2 different occasions on the same day up to 4 hours of outages. Again, the businesses that were using those services from DEN, their presence on the internet was taken down. It's not that the businesses were shut down, but their presence on the internet was taken down. And in today's world, how do we find information? Our first thought is to search. Our first thought is to go try and find somebody's website, whatever the case might be. Those businesses no longer had a presence during those times. This one just came out. The U.S. law firm has been hacked by the Chinese nationals for $4 million in insider trading profits. We understand how this happened now. Two web servers for each of the firms were hacked. The attackers watched mergers and acquisitions information going across, were able to understand where mergers and acquisitions were going to take place, and were able to do insider trading based on those. They're saying they profited $4 million in insider trading. I can't stress enough, when we're looking at the internet, when we're talking about things, it is a dirty world out there, right? It's a scary world. There are, people on the internet, there are attackers on the internet at all times trying to be malicious and steal information. This is a good example, especially in the case that we're speaking on here, of it happening to large firms. But small firms are just as at risk. There's just as much information in a small firm as there in a large firm that it can be compromised and used against. Business security spending will increase. This is our hope, right? This is our hope of moving forward. In 2017, security conversations will continue to intensify around not only securing the data and network, but physical security as well. Think about the building, the people, and the assets. And really what we're talking about here is not just the security of it all, but actually investing in that security. Not just the cameras or the network security or the badge system when people enter the building or whatever the case might be. We're talking about businesses investing in the security and not letting security be an afterthought, but truly be on the forefront of what you're thinking about in your day-to-day when running that business. And that leads right into my next slide. Security will no longer be an afterthought. In 2017, it'll be a critical year for security. Starting with how it's built into technology, DevOps and security will change the way they work together as they realize they need to integrate with each other in order to survive. And what's the takeaway from that? I think I said it previous. We need to have security always on the forefront. We need to be thinking about ways to secure the environments that we're in. We can talk about physical security. We can talk about network security. We can talk about firewalls. We can talk about two-factor. We can talk about web servers. There's lots of it out there, right? But really what we need to be thinking about is we need to invest in the securing of the environments that we're a part of. So some mitigation efforts. I think it's important that if we talk about cybersecurity, we talk about threats, we talk about hacks, we have some examples of, is how do we mitigate those efforts? Here at Abacus, we have adopted for our Abacus private cloud a technology called Duo, which is a two-factor authentication. There are many two-factor authentication options out there. We chose Duo simply for the fact that it is not a text message and or a token when it came to the issuing of the two-factor. It is a push notification using a secure application provided by Duo to our devices when logging into our cloud. We use that for ourselves as well as offer it as a service for our customers. For those that don't know what two-factor authentication is, it is when you're credentialing in with a username and password, you get another factor of authentication. As I stated before, there's multiple options out there. We chose Duo as our two-factor authentication because it uses a push notification. It is not a text message, which means it cannot be intercepted. And most online systems, including QuickBooks, Dropbox, and most practice management systems today are offering the two-factor authentication. If you have a chance, please review Duo's site. It is on the screen, duo.com. They integrate with so much. If it's an RDP session, if it's a web logging into a website, there are so many different ways that you can incorporate Duo into your day-to-day lives. Securing a local area network with NGFs is what we like to call those, the next generation firewalls. And we've had firewalls for years, right? What is the NGF? Really, when we think about the next generation firewall, we think about a few things, right? One, IPS and IDS. Those are going to be the intrusion prevention systems and intrusion detection systems baked into the firewall. So not a separate appliance, not a separate service, but something that is baked into the firewall in its initial offering. Obviously, having secure VPN access, SSL and or user initiated, whichever works for that business, but the ability to have secure VPN access is eminent, right? We are all out in this workforce, traveling, doing what we will, and we need the ability to connect back into our local network, but we need to ensure that it's secured. Site-to-site VPNs, especially when multiple offices are involved, is obviously a better way to go about it than just having user-initiated VPNs. The site-to-site VPNs are hardware-to-hardware, firewall-to-firewall. Those allow for all traffic passing between the two offices and or between the two sites, if that's a data center and an office, whatever it might be, allows for all of that traffic to be encrypted so that it cannot be sniffed, it cannot be checked from the wide open internet. Obviously, a self-service portal for looking at quarantine items, VPN configurations, etc., is a part of those next generation firewalls. And that just allows for the user to, exactly what I said, act with some self-servicing. Advanced threat protection, the ability for the firewall to identify an anomaly in traffic and or a threat in the traffic is key. It is key. If a firewall can find the threat and mitigate that threat never makes it to the endpoint, meaning the desktop, the laptop, the phone, etc. So because they are out there now, we always encourage our customers, or when working with anybody, to make sure that they're investing in next generation firewalls. We touched on two-factor authentication with Duo. The next generation firewalls also have two-factor authentication, and that's really going to be for when issuing an SSL VPN into an environment, using an SSL client, whatever a case might be. And those are going to be similar to what we used to see, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years ago with the RSA keys and tokens that change every 30 seconds. So those keys are changing every 30 seconds. Securing web servers, and the reason I put this up as its own piece is because with the U.S. law firm that were hacked here, back in I believe late last year, we want to talk about WAF, right? Web application firewalls. Protecting those web servers the way they need to be protected. We have clear examples happened late last year of 2 web servers in 2014 and 2015 being compromised. That data was used to generate $4 million worth of profit for individuals who compromised those. So web application firewalls protect the web servers and the applications alike. Server hardening with deep link protection from hardening, that's really looking at the core OS that's running for those web servers. So we're going to have a core operating system, and then we're going to have our web services on top of that. We need to harden the core operating system to ensure that it's patched, to ensure that any exploits that have been identified have been mitigated via the manufacturer, etc. Antivirus and scanning on file uploads, obviously that isn't key. We would anticipate that most users would have antivirus at the desktop, right, or at their endpoint, whichever that is, if it's a desktop, a laptop, whatever the case might be. But also, yes, if you have a web server that is accepting data from a customer or from a client, having the ability to scan that file before it is solidified and said, yes, it's available, is key. That way, you're ensuring that that CryptoLocker virus is not coming into your environment via a unknown source. Sometimes the client doesn't even know they're infected, so they move the file. They don't understand what's happened there. So really, going back to the main point, right? Web application firewalls. They are available. Some have them baked into an NGF that we just spoke about before, and some are an add-on service that you can participate in. Email protection. Can't stress it enough. We just can't stress this enough. Spam filters, antivirus filters at the edge, all of those are key elements to protecting the email, protecting your email. Self-service quarantines we spoke about those in those next generation firewalls. A part of the NGFs that Abacus utilizes is a spam and quarantine already baked into the solution. So our next generation firewalls that we have subscribed to have the spam and antivirus filtering already baked into them, and we get quarantine lists every day to let us know who has tried to submit in or email in a quarantine or an infected file and or message containing infection. Yes, there are false positive, but I will tell you the stricter is better. Right? Everybody wants just to whitelist and move forward and say, hey, I know who these people are, or I know who this distribution list is from, etc. I would encourage you to always be mindful of where those messages are coming from, looking at the header or looking at the email addresses in detail to ensure that it is the email address that you expect prior to executing anything within a message. Outlook add-ins are great. If the antivirus or the antivirus company that you use today has an Outlook plugin so that you can mark something as spam or a message can be checked for a virus prior to opening, that is key. So those Outlook plugins we've seen great success with internally as well as with some of our customers. So a few tips to keep you safe. I think the glaring one for me is think before you act, right? Pause, take a moment, look at the attachment, understand who it's from. Is it something that you knew was coming and you were expecting? Is it the sender, someone that you knew was you traded emails with before, etc.? But really taking a moment, pausing and thinking before we act. If we're doing a Google search, if we get into the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th page, should we be clicking on all those links and trying to find out, continuing on, or should we refine our search to try and be more specific to the use case that we're trying to use, right? So really, I can't stress it enough. We talk about it internally. We talk about it with our customers. Think before you act. Take a moment, pause. 30 seconds isn't going to kill us. Really, and second tip, businesses need to start creating a plan for an attack. What happens if you are attacked? What are you going to do? What is your mitigation plan? How are you going to understand what's happened, what was compromised, what's been removed from the environment, and now secure? How are you going to go through that? So having a mitigation plan or a plan of attack is key. I think this goes without saying, number 3, but I'm going to say it anyways. Confirm that your computers and browsers are always up to date with the latest from the operating system manufacturer. I don't think we can say anything more than that, right? If you're a Windows shop, Windows updates. If you're a Mac OS shop, yes, we used to all hear that Macs no longer would not be infected with viruses. That is not true. That is not true. They can be infected. So keeping those devices up to date is key. From an email perspective, if you're using Office 365 or if you're using Gmail, I included a link in here to check if your accounts have been compromised. The beauty of Office 365 and Gmail alike is that they have these features baked into the solutions so that you can actually log in and check the last time that someone tried to access your account, where that account was tried to access from. Gmail actually does a great job with sending a notification if access from a different IP address than something that is known in the past. So those solutions are out there, so I would encourage everybody to, if you're using Gmail and or Office 365 as an email solution, I would encourage you to take a peek, see when the last time your accounts were accessed or somebody tried to use your password or attempt to test your password and or try to log in as you. And finally, when it comes to passwords, using a password management tool is key. Right? LastPass is what we utilize here internally. KeyPass is another one that's available. These are online services that are free to an end user. So if to an end user, these services are free. They can be accessed anywhere from a web browser, a mobile device, if for a paid account, etc. But it's a secure place to store your passwords so that you don't have to remember them. And more importantly, it allows for you to create cryptic passwords. So that we're no longer seeing password 123 or capital P at SSW0RD for passwords. Those are known. If you're using them, people know about them. So these places allow for you to also generate passwords in a cryptic manner. Put cybersecurity on the agenda before it becomes the agenda, and I can't say that enough, right? Make it your agenda for 2017 before it becomes your agenda for 2017. Many people feel like it won't happen to them. Many people feel like we're too small. We have security, already in mind. I would encourage everybody to have an agenda before it becomes your agenda. The impact of not recognizing and preempting cyber risk can be long-term. They can be business shattering. They can be business closing. So ensuring that you have a plan, you have an agenda on how to react if you have been attacked and how to ensure that your mitigation plan is in place and protecting the assets within the environment. Well, that's it for me. I thank you all. And questions?
Great, thank you, Thomas. I'll just remind everyone, or in case if you came in a little late and missed the intro, if you do have a question, go ahead and submit it in the little question box, the webinar panel that should be on the right side of your screen. So we'll start with the first question we have. How do I know my data is safe when I'm at court, traveling, or, for example, working at a coffee shop?
That's a great question. How do I know if my data is safe? My gut reaction is storing your data on your local laptop and being accessed to a public internet. I would assume your data is not safe. I would encourage everybody to store their data in some type of cloud repository that has data that has security in mind. Right? So if it's a Box.com or a Dropbox or a OneDrive from Microsoft, you can incorporate the two-factor authentication into that. So anytime that your data is being accessed, you know when it was accessed, how it was accessed, and you have two-factor authentication saying it was only you. Abacus Private Cloud also incorporates all of those technologies into it.
Great, thanks. So a lot of questions coming in. The next one I'll ask is some clarification on what LastPass is. They're saying they thought having a single password is a security risk. Is that what LastPass is, or is it something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, LastPass is a password management tool. So LastPass has the ability to create passwords and store passwords for you. So it's not having one password for all of your accounts. It is a place to store the passwords, and I'll have some assistance in creating passwords. I'll go back to my example. We see more and more, or not as much anymore, and let me pause on that. We have seen in the past password 123, daughter's name, son's name, birth dates, middle name, whatever they are. They're easily guessable. So what LastPass allows for you to do is create a cryptic password and then store that cryptic password associated with an account. When you are working in a web browser, for example, LastPass has a plugin that you can actually use the password without ever seeing it. And it says copy password, you paste the password, you never see it, you know that it's stored in a secure location. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Another question we have is there any way to decrypt the data without paying the ransom?
Is there any way to decrypt? We've heard this. We have attempted this. I myself and my team have attempted to decrypt the data. We have not been successful. Well, I'll tell you there is no way to do it. I can't say that. There might be somebody out there that has the key. There might be someone that has a piece of software. So I can't say by default no. But what I will say is 99% of people that get infected with that virus either pay the ransom, sacrifice the data, or go to backup.
Great, thank you. Another question is from the same person asking about LastPass. How do they check Microsoft Exchange to see if anyone has accessed their account other than the authorized users?
That would going to be if you have an on-premise Exchange server, that would be in logs. So your Exchange administrator should have access, and if you have any failed attempts into the account, it will be in the event viewer.
Great. Another question we have is, after an attack by a hacker, how do we make sure they are out of our systems?
That's going to be intrusion detection systems, right? IDS. What we would do as a consultant, we would come in and we would run IDS, looking for traffic anomalies, looking for files that shouldn't be there, looking for files accessed at times that nobody is around, etc. So really, it's going to be an intrusion detection system once you believe you've been mitigated, and then securing the environment. And I mean by securing, changing all passwords, resetting all accounts, changing firewall passwords, switch passwords, the whole gamut of. But really, it's going to be an IDS solution that would be scanning the inside.
Great, thank you. Another question we have is asking, how would someone who's maybe new to this topic get used to the technical requirements so that they can provide it to their IT personnel?
I would try to find a provider that is. You need to interview your providers. And what I mean by that is there's managed service providers that are out there that are specifically focused around security. Those businesses, that's their business model. That's all that they're there to do. So interviewing them, having someone explain it in layman's terms, right? It's great to hear all these acronyms that we use, VPNs and ISAs and RSA keys and all this fun stuff. But really, it needs to be broken down in layman's terms so everybody can understand. So I would say interview MSPs, interview security firms, and then where you're comfortable, make the decision to go with, right? Trust that gut. Trust the gut your gut instinct as to who you would be comfortable with, but truly make sure that they are managed service providers focused in the IT vertical, as well as security providers focused in the IT vertical.
Great, and kind of similar, also someone who's kind of new to this topic, what would be the best way to learn kind of the lingo in the field so they can understand better what to do?
Take an IT guy to have beers. I mean, in all seriousness, I say that jokingly, but in all seriousness, it's education, right? It's truly education. Is looking if there's a CompTIA certificate or certification around Security Plus. There is education out there that starts at the base and works its way up. So recommendation would be chum it up with an IT guy who this is their profession, and or start to look into some education around security. CompTIA offers a Security Plus certification that is specifically focused in network security.
Perfect, thanks. Another question we have is asking if you have any experience in how cyber insurance plays in cases that you worked on. Would you recommend this, or is it best to invest that money in technical precautionary measures?
I would recommend to everybody to have cyber insurance. I am not an expert in the cyber insurance world. I understand the cybersecurity side of it. The insurance side is a whole nother beast, but I would recommend that everybody invest in it. My experience when I was working with the broker-dealers and a consultant, we went to our insurance to pay it out. So I would always recommend that every business has some type of cybersecurity insurance. I do have a friend, a colleague who runs a securities firm, and he is specific around insurance, and that's where his focus is. So anytime I have those questions or a business has those questions, I definitely try to farm those out to him because he is an expert in the field. Again, I am not an expert on the insurance side, but I recommend that everybody have it.
Thanks. Another question we have is, what is your opinion on creating a honeypot type set of folders in order to be notified if CryptoLocker is attacking your servers?
It's a great idea. The unfortunate part is if you have a honeypot, they need to be at the top. If they're at the top and the infection, let's say the honeypot is on a network share, that share is a drive letter. C is above that. So if the infection comes in, C is going to be hit first. Although we like to talk about all these folder redirects and we're guaranteeing that users are not storing data on their endpoints, etc. That's not usually the case. There's usually some type of document or something that is on the end user's C drive. It's going to be above the honeypot. If it's a network share or a drive letter, C comes before, if you start working your way down the alphabet, E, F, G, H, as you work your way down. So C is going to be infected. If the honeypot was, alerted on and said, the infection is coming or the infection has happened, and you had a way to make it live above, absolutely. Absolutely, that would be a great idea. Is that feasible? I think when you're in an enterprise environment, lots of seats, that's going to be a little difficult.
Great. Another question we have is, if my hard drive is hijacked and encrypted, is my OneDrive also?
No. Depends on how far the one, specifically to that question, no. Can it be? Can it become encrypted? Absolutely.
Thank you. And then another question we have is, what about education and training internally to be more aware of cyber threats, since many data breaches involve human error?
Yes. I can't say that enough. We should always be educating our users. We should always be educating our staff as to types of attacks that are out there, especially the social engineering ones. The examples that I cited in the presentation, clearly talked about people not wanting to talk about it. I got a job offer, or I saw illicit content. They don't want to speak about it. We need to let our users know that if something doesn't feel right, raise your hand, speak up. We need to know about it so that we can focus attention and ensure the health of the network and or the machine itself.
Great, thank you. And I think that's all the questions that we have for today, so I'll just repeat myself, or if you missed the intro, we will be sending a follow-up email that will have a recording of this presentation and a little more information about Abacus. So thank you all for your great questions today. Thank you for attending the webinar. And thank you to our sponsor, Abacus, and Thomas for presenting today. Thank you all.
Thank you.